Hello. Welcome to another edition of Esoteric Book Club. We're reading Alan Moore's Illuminations. We are on the chapter, What Can We Know About Thunderman, talking about story 10 through story 15. So I think we're about a third of, or 2/3 of the way through. I think next time we should be able to finish it off. Probably. Oh, it's kind of chunky. We'll talk about that at the end. But yeah, let's go over our initial, or our overall impressions of this section, and yeah, talk about, I guess, some implications. It sounds like, sounds like we'll have a lot of plugs to things on the outside of this book, or there were, I don't know, links that we have or something. So we'll talk about that too in this meeting. So yeah, my impressions. Unfortunately, I kind of feel the same. I do have a much after we met last time, I'm definitely more interested in reading this. It's like more interesting, but I'm still having a hard time like connecting to. I do think it's an important thing to write about, so I understand, but I'm just having a hard time connecting the characters, understanding what's going on a little bit. Yeah, I think it's just, but some of them were I really liked the one on the reviews on the movies. I thought that was really fun and a really cool way to put it. Yeah, I thought that. Yeah, and the implications of how comic books have shaped a culture is, or the American culture, is very interesting. So, but kind of the same. So I'm gonna be team poo poo on what can we know about Thunderman. My answer's not a lot so far, which is maybe just unfortunate for me. But I'm being lighthearted about it, and I love his writing style, so it was much easier for me to engage and connect this round of it. Cody, what were your impressions?
Yeah, I still like it. I think, yeah, it's kind of, I think we've kind of discussed a lot of the point of the whole thing. But it's still fun. There's some like really entertaining stuff in it. Like, yeah, the reviews are cool. And I like thinking about how it applies to the real world of comics and like Marvel and DC and those things. And I like how it kind of gets in the heads of some of these characters and their perspectives and stuff. And like, I think it's really interesting how they're kind of seeing the world, or kind of this, it's kind of surreal. It's like the ways these like odd characters are interpreting their reality. And like the last chapter 14, which was like, he's like sitting there and he's like, there's like this blending of like, is the fly talking to him, or is he hallucinating the whole thing? It's like, or is this person really like really there talking to him, this like CIA operative or whatever, or whatever State Department.
Mhm.
And like, I just think that's really interesting, like this like unknown like reality, but yet it has like real world implications, like what's happening. So like what's happening in his head, like the imaginal world is like then translated into, obviously he's gonna like make these comics that are propaganda for the US government. um so I just find that really fascinating how it kind of, and like the one, I don't know if that was in our reading or if it was last week, but the one, oh yeah, I think it was this one, because where he's like in the offices touring the office, and he's like, he sees the like cutout of Thunderman, and he like thinks it's a real person, and he like, and like the people having sex in the elevator, but it's like it's this weird organism. And I just love the way Alan Moore kind of like constructs reality, and how there's always these like these, and like how these people who are in the comic book industry are always they're in like this kind of half fantasy world already. And like, so so they're already kind of existing in their comic world, and then it translates into like this whole propaganda system, and they're like feeding these strange loops. And yeah, I just think it's like I really like it for that. The chapter with like the internet discussion was a little bit like
Oh,
extraneous, I felt, but that one was kind of boring, but it was fast, so it was okay.
yeah, I didn't really know the point all the way. I mean, except tying like maybe trying to, yeah, you like you said, connect, maybe trying to connect with some like, I mean, because they mentioned like QAnons and I think Aleister Crowley in that section. So they brought in a lot of like things from this world. So maybe it was trying to like connect those dots or something. But I didn't get it either. Britannia, what were your impressions? Oh,
I love his writing style. It's like fun and creative, and I think it's like it sees the insidious nature like beneath and kind of like represents like the spiritual matter through like the imagery. So I feel like his wording is always pretty amazing. Um, the characters are I think it's fun getting to know the main character a little more in like different settings, like it goes back in time to him, like just like I don't know, just different weird circumstances that kind of suspension of disbelief, like you guys are talking about a little bit. Um, yeah, I some of it, yeah, like you were saying with the that one chapter, you don't know where it's going, kind of. You're like, okay, is this just more like expose? But he is really building the depth of the world and showing like the natures beneath. And I think like the America propaganda thing, the whole concept of like a hero and all that kind of fun stuff is really really cool. And I think it's the way he's putting it, especially for people who are like fans of comics and stuff. I think it's a really fun way to integrate, like Cody was saying, the reality of the situation into this kind of like dystopian world, but it's like almost a reflection of the world that we're in, but like a black mirror of it. And so I think that's a fun window to be reading through. Yeah.
yeah, cool.
And I sent Haley a link actually that, and I don't think I have your number, Britannia, but I would send you the link too on the text. But
I'll
it
make it.
was actually like it was a link to a story about how the U.S. government like funded and developed comic books as propaganda, both in the United States against like Nazis in World War II, and then like communists, and
Oh
then
yeah.
also like distributed comic books to other countries, um, as propaganda against, like, for example, like a comic book they sent to Cuba against like the Castro regime, and they would like airdrop them, and yeah, like, and as like a simple like mass media, like pop culture, like easy, and like it has like
Yeah.
racist undertones. It's like the
Oh
thinking
yeah,
that
I've
like
seen some of
the
them.
global south is like dumb, so the comic books is what they're gonna like relate to. Like, yeah. So I think the story is like inspired by that real world thing that happened.
Oh yeah, 100%. And they're really going for that age group of like young boys that are like forming their perspectives of reality,
Mhm.
which I think is like very insidious. They're targeting children in like a very deep way.
What I find is interesting though is like in this, and I think this chapter really points that out, is that there is this propagandistic, but it's also like a wild west. Like there's all these other like pornographic comics and like really radical ideas and radical comics that are coming out in the midst of this, and like using these heroes subversively and all these different ways that it like kind of undermines some of the like American propaganda, or like try to get slip under it. Like the chapter about with the guy like in the like congressional deposition. He's like trying to talk, and like he's like trying to defend his like pretty radical like horror and porno comics or
Oh man, that
whatever.
was such a train wreck. That was such a train wreck.
Yeah, I like that chapter a lot because it's like humorous. Like he's like hyped up on meth or something, or like diet pills or whatever he's taking, and like trying to do his deposition. Yeah, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like yeah, the character again, like the characters who are involved in these things are hilarious. They are subversive and they're weirdos. Like a bunch of like total like outsiders, kind of like, and like, but then being like kind of used and manipulated by the system and by the money, and then like their property taken by big money and made into movies. And I mean, and I know that's Alan Moore himself has a huge bone to pick about that. Like
Oh, really?
he's been in battles with DC Comics for a long time over like the rights to his stuff, and like he's publicly opposed to like the fact that they made movies out of his books. And he's not even like, he doesn't even want to be listed on the credits. He's not listed on the credits of like V for Vendetta or Watchmen or probably League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, all these movies that have been made from his stuff that they have the rights to, that he's like refuses to even be associated with.
That's so nuts.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. So it's like,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, when you read the books and then you watch the movie, you can see what fine tuning they did in the propaganda machine and why he wouldn't like it.
Okay. All right. That's huge.
Like I feel like his writing is so good and so accurate that it's kind of like if Wes Anderson wrote like word for word a screenplay, you'd have to do it exactly like he says, or it wouldn't be a Wes Anderson film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like exactly like that. So I can see the complete like and utter disgrace of, you know, and he makes a lot of cool characters that I think become so shallow in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like they'd have to make a 3-hour movie for him. They'd have to get like an intermission for sure, you know, like it would have to be like that, or like a 2-part movie for each thing, you know.
I mean, and that's even reflected, I think, in the chapter of talking about the movies, you know, the movie review chapter that we read. It just got progressively worse, you know, with United Supermen, you know, number 14, 1 star in 2017. It's like, you know, I love the starred rating for them. I like how that was, but he just, you know, this ideal version of, yeah, the superhero back in the day, you know, with how they degrade the characters over time. And, you know, I think that's more to do with society and also with the intention of the writers on this, you know, and how film can convey things to audiences. Like I have a lot of opinions about Dune, for instance, and that's something that, like, you know, I've read, and then, you know, on that and the different, you know, director or, you know, movie people who tried to envision that, you know, it's just so interesting. Like I like all the representations of it, but I could see how it can be so there's like artistic liberties that can be taken that don't reflect what was written. Just, or how can you, because it's also
the spirit.
like, yeah, the spirit of it. I mean, yeah, it's interesting with this. I mean, yeah, it is interesting with the superhero, how that does reflect the society, you know. Something I commented recently was a lot of kids movies had like superhero type of personalities. I forget, like Paw Patrol, or like different, like, I don't even know. There were like a bunch of like, then when my cousin was watching TV recently, it was like, there's all these superheroes on there. And like, it's really like putting in kids' minds that they need to save, you know, the world, that the world is in trouble and that it needs saving. And I think I might have commented on this in some of our other meetings or at some point, you know, I've just been I had noticed that like, yeah, there's really this like need for kids to be their own superhero right now because nobody's going to save them. They need to be the one with the responsibility of, you know, taking care of people and things and the planet and whatever. And I mean, I think that's a lot of pressure. Like, I think in this type of thing, it's put on one character, you know, to do that. And like the comic book world, like this person has that power because of this and they're saving it. But it's like when it's like, oh, I want to be like Paw Patrol, you know, like that could be any kid. Then it's like, oh man, you know, like that's a lot of pressure, I think, you know. I don't know. And it inherently says that there's something wrong, which like in these fantasy worlds, it's like there's evil characters and it's a battle of good versus evil. And it's very clear, you know, where I think we have a lot more, yeah, convoluted lines now and a lot more stressors that take away innocence a little bit quicker, maybe. Maybe that's just me being super dark today, but you follow my drift.
Yeah, you're right. It's yeah, I mean, I think like, and it feeds kind of the individualistic nature. I mean, I think like, and that's kind of where we've come with mass media and pop culture. It just feeds, it's a capitalistic propaganda machine of like feeding our own, like, we like by telling us we need to save everything. It's telling, and I think we kind of talked about this last week. It's telling us we like, it's all on us, so that then we buy all the things to make us save ourselves or save the world. You know, it's like filling it's like when we're given like this void of like unknowing or like of like this horrible future, it's like, what do we do with that? We can buy shit to just like kind of pad ourselves against it. That's like, otherwise it's like way too overwhelming to even like try to even think about and fix anything. Like, but it's like everything's going too fast in that sense. Like we're not given any way to like slow down and just take our lives as it is and then like build on that. And I think in this story, like this, in that the chapter with the movie reviews, how like this Thunderman, the early Thunderman, is this kind of like mythical thing, that like godlike being that we could like look up to, you know, that's like becomes like an imaginal ideal. And it's not put on us, but we can like maybe invoke this thing as like a deity, and there's like depth to it, there's like soul depth, and it progressively gets like shallower to where there's no depth to our heroes. They're just weird reflections of the like convoluted, like consumeristic, like messed up culture. They're not beyond us. They're not like, you know, they're not transcendent heroes. They're actually like just mundane, but and problem and with their own problems. And you know, I kind of like that. I think there's like a reflection in that, but then they're expected to be, because they're like us. They're like, we kind of like are trying to identify with them more, and then it becomes problematic. But like when there's like these transcendent ideals and like these mythical, like building the like myth, the tragedy and the comedy of myth is like so deep in human nature. And like these comic books, actually, I think he has the point where these comic books and even in movie and TV shows have this ability to like invoke that. Actually, they can do that, but then they don't. Like they've just become progressively shallower just to like feed the money machine, instead of like giving us something to like contemplate and to actually do practice magic with, as in like the chaos magic idea of like, you know, we don't connect with, I don't connect with Apollo so much anymore, so but I can maybe connect with Batman, you know, like,
Yeah.
because like, or like other like pop culture references that that have been developed as like, and for me, like Star Wars, I think has like a lot of really cool shit. And I have like watched so much and like thought about it. I'm a total nerd with this stuff, but thought about and Star Trek, but in different ways. But I can become a total nerd with like the Force and like, and I can relate it to Buddhist ideas, and like I've built like a mythology around it that I feel like I can embody more of a Jedi spirit, because there is spirit to it. There is depth when you follow it like to that level. And I think like he's like giving a lot in this story to like these nerds who do follow it at this level, and they are embodying something, but they're weirdos and they like are embodying like weird neuroses with it too.
Yeah.
And that's okay and that's cool too. But yeah.
Yeah, I love Star Wars and Star Trek in different ways for different reasons, and I love the lore behind it too. And I hated that Disney got its hands on it because it's like the capitalism one, but like it's still fun to see its universe like existing and whatever. I still kind of watch them and I'm trying to enjoy them. They're not as good as I'd hope they'd be, but they're still good. Like they're still
Have
fun
you
to
seen
watch, you know.
Andor?
Huh? Yeah.
Have you seen Andor? Andor's
Yeah.
good. I liked
Yeah.
Andor.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been watching all of them. Honestly, I
Yeah.
can't not. I tried to hold out because the Grogu thing really turned me off. I was like, oh, Baby Yoda. I knew they'd pull some plushy bullshit out, and
Yeah.
I was so I knew it, but I didn't think they'd do it so quick. I thought they kind of had some tact, but they didn't.
Yeah.
So that kind of turned me off for a while. But then I was like, okay, I love Star Wars so much. Like I
Yeah.
can't like not know what happens. Like I like seeing the world, and I like being in it, and like I like the honor code that they have. I
Mhm.
feel like that there's like some inherent like trust still left in the world, and it's kind of run off like honor like that in a way. Like people just like people could be wiling out, but like they really aren't, and we all do kind of hold each other to like a decent standard most of the time. I can't say certain parts of the world right now are looking a little dim, but you know, they still got good people there hoping harder than ever. So, you
Yeah.
know.
There's so many good people. It's just like it just sucks that like these minority like fascist groups are like have so much power because they have
Well, it's because
control of weapons. Like it's like, oh
And then majority groups have, and then the opposite. It's like then the big bully comes in too, you know,
yeah,
and has all the things like you have no resources, we don't care about you, you know, like nuts,
yeah,
gnarly. Like few people ruin it for the mass, but then it's like
hmm
the major mass ruins it for everyone. Like we're like, oh fuck, you know, like what is going on? That's how I
mhm,
not funny. Like it's ridiculous. It's just not. I can't believe this is part of our reality right now. You know,
yeah. But
like
it's probably it's always been this way. I mean, it's just
yeah,
in some places have been more utopian and less authoritarian than others at times, but
yeah. It has always been. It's we're on such a global scale now. Like globalization, it just our form of communications really changed things. And I mean, I'm sure they had that at some other point with technologies that we don't know about. You know, or just underground gold conspiracy theory stuff, but I mean, which is interesting. But I don't know that it's been as interconnected as we are right now. So that's just that maybe that's the difference.
yeah,
And we're very, very focused on traveling to the stars in physical ways, where I think that in the past it was a lot more metaphorical and a lot more, consciousness raising levels, you know, which I mean, I think is the only way to get there, but that's like the true way, you know, with the ship way is a whole nother deal, you know? Um, so that's an interesting crux of civilization that we're living through, I guess.
yeah. Well, yeah, and like I think this relates to the to this book because like the imaginal is like, or I don't like the word imaginal because I think it's limited. It's a little limited to like because it infers just like it's just in your head. It's just in the imagination. But it's obvious like I'm speaking from the sense of like Lon Milo DuQuette's like it's all in your head, but the world but it's your head's bigger than you think it is. But but yeah, it's like all the in like the imaginal realms that that like we can really ascend to like and explore other planets and like really really explore things, but but the imaginal's been diminished by by propaganda machines, by these power systems that like don't want us doing that. They want us to like they want us to like fit into their narrow narratives. I mean, and that's like religion has well, the powers of religion have done that for a long time, like manipulating people by that.
Well, we get so inundated with our 3D lives that it's hard to look up, or look at anything that's going else around you. I mean, that's most of people's lives, and at least where we are, like, I think, are just spent, indoors working, like doing their thing, like we don't have a lot of like time outside of a screen right now, or, I mean, unless you really make the effort to form your life around it that way. And I think that's really interesting. Like, I mean, they said like everyone will have a chip, a chip in your hand, and it's like, oh, we have chips in our hand, like we just stare at screens, which again, it increases our communication, and we've been able to do such global efforts that way, which I mean, it's not something that like you don't hate the technology. It's like, but there is like a, consciousness, like lowering kind of thing for that, or not lowering, but like halting, your vision in that, which it's hard, that. And then you still, I still play cell phone games all the time. I still like to be in my little fantasy world because I have stuff to figure out here, sort it together before I can be in the state to live as fluidly as I'd want to,
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Of what we, I don't know, signed up for or something.
Yeah.
I didn't ask to be born.
I feel like this was not in the fine print. This had to have been like the teeny tiny fine print.
Yeah.
You are entering into an alternate dimension that is not perfect by any means.
Yeah.
Grateful to be living through it, but yeah, it seems like it's equally as beautiful as it is freaking hard, I don't know, snarly ups and downs.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that we recognize like that there is more. like that's I mean, I really hate to judge other people and like it's like but that's the one thing that I feel like is so just having an open mind, like understanding that like everybody lives in this like reality tunnels, and that like we can only be what we are. We can only be what our imagination and our world around us has fed us to be. So like and that can be so expansive, and that we can explore that, and we can go into our little cell phone games, but we can also come out and do LBRPs and like summon angels and like do all these cool rituals that like enrich our lives and give us a much fuller, rounder picture of things. And like we don't have to follow like and then we don't have to like buy into a lot of the bullshit because of that, because we're able to like expand our imaginal like so much more, and like and not just be totally stuck in these like really basic reality tunnels that like might be like not in our best interest or not in other people's best interest, or particularly the world and other sentient beings other than humans best interest,
I mean,
like
and that's how you break those loops, it's just by gaining momentum in like understanding that you can have different paths, it reroutes things for you. It reroutes. And I mean, it's individually, but collectively as well. Like, I mean, I think we're part of the story of breaking these binds that we've been living in. So, I mean, giving ourselves grace, knowing that we can't do it by ourselves, but knowing that little things help, and, understanding that we are still stuck in 3D life, but, understanding that we can like have more interdimensional experiences using magic, I mean, best way I've found, but, using all these tools that, have been always a part of humanity's existence. Like, I mean, that's such a cool thing. Like, and I'm really grateful to be part of that story. Like, it's any type of, financial trouble or like war talk or whatever we're going through. It's like, with that, like I'm glad that I could be a part of the cycle of hopefully breaking some of these illusions for others, and for myself.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep that stuff alive through, and I think through time, like the torchbearers of that, like they're my heroes, those are the heroes of the world and of magic, the people who've borne those torches. And I think a lot of them are like even like Jesus and stuff are like awesome people, but then of course they're used by other people in like really nefarious ways. So it's like that's what's tough, because again, it's like any symbol we have can be manipulated by someone in power to like achieve their aims, to control people and achieve the aims of that.
Yeah.
And this book illustrates that really well. Again, it's like I think that's a really good point in this story.
Yeah.
That I think probably can't be stated too much in some ways nowadays.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think the end of this chapter is going to be more punchy. I mean, the beginning I feel like was punchy. This middle was a little bit context building, I guess, and like fun. It seems like, I mean, I don't know that, but hopefully we get
It's definitely getting weirder. It's like
Okay.
kind of getting more unhinged and a little weirder, where like the reality and subrealism is being subverted a little bit. And it's kind of like blurring the lines more and more between like the imaginary and the imaginary world, or whatever you'd say that is. But like what you guys were saying with like, you mean the more imagination you have on like outcomes, like the more imagination you have, the more outcomes you can imagine, the more options you have on the way your life can go. And then you can use guides to like help you choose between like more options if you have more imagination to kind of create those.
1000%.
yeah, I totally agree, but I also think that can be like too much imagination can be overwhelming and way too nebulous too. So there has to be like some balance in there somehow. Like
There needs to be action taken on it.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah, like plugged into the physical. Yeah. Well, I think that's what's interesting about like he said that Thunderman saved his life, like ironically, but for real. And then, so like literally that was like a really funny like irony, but also not. It was so perfect. But then he goes, into the office, and it's just like kind of a deranged place with like kind of deranged characters, and it makes him feel like, because they don't have windows in there, and I have an office that doesn't have windows, and I know how it feels to like lose time, in that way where like you're on comic book time now, like, and he was saying that how the concept of time is different in there. And so it's like he's like finally going into the world of the other that he's been like an observer of. And he finally has become like, communing with the other. I think it was like him like going into that world and like allowing like Thunderman to like save him. It's like his daemon or something.
yeah.
But it's not like the actual superhero. It's like the concept of the superhero that saved him, because he's getting hired for that.
Well, yeah, it's like he used Thunderman as his like godlike figure in AA in place because he didn't believe in the Christian
In
God.
God, yeah. I
So
love
like
that though. That was so like, oh, I don't know.
and that's a clear like shout out to the chaos magic idea of like using what's heroes we have that we can connect with to summon, not not these archaic things that we don't have a cultural connection to.
Totally. Do you think Alan Moore would identify as a chaos magician?
Yeah, I know he's like very well versed in that stuff. Like he knows does he even talk about that a little bit somewhere?
He mentions
I
a
feel
few
like
magical names in this one.
yeah.
Yeah, he's
No,
definitely animistic in the ecosystem realm. Like he's definitely good at building and observing and, creating ecosystems of like the character in the world and also within the character, like their internal world. So yeah.
Totally.
yeah. No, he's like, and he's well versed in like Kabbalah and like his references to Crowley and 777 and all those things. Like he's very well versed. I mean, Promethea is like the lesson in Kabbalah, right?
Yeah.
Um, oh,
Cool.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I think he's well versed in like chaos magic and stuff too. He's like, I think he's practiced that.
Yeah, I
all
wonder
that
what
ceremonial magic.
I mean, it'd be very interested for the What Magic Is This podcast interview with him. That would be really cool. Like, hopefully,
Yeah, I heard him mention it when I was listening to one of, I don't remember which episode. I was kind of listening to a string of them while I was cleaning. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what he has to say because, his episodes are pretty, thorough, but also really fun and they go into cool places. And I want to know what topics they are gonna discuss.
yeah. No, I
And
love.
he's got Alamo. He's got a great accent. He's got that up like Northampton England English accent that's like
Cool.
precious kind of old English, like oh forget what, like Yorkshire almost, or like forget where Northampton is. If listeners hear this, I apologize for my ignorance of English, but he's got a great like accent from that city where he lives.
Cool.
An accent that I think he like comments in Jerusalem about it's kind of a dying accent too, because everybody's just kind of homogenizes.
Well, I'll put the link. I'll put the link to the article that you sent.
He was born in Northampton.
Oh.
And has lived there ever since.
Huh.
Yeah, where is Northampton though? That's what I'm trying to remember where it is. It's like,
oh, the Hamptons are up, like, aren't they in the north? They're already kind of more north.
They're by Maryland. I think it's state of New York, but
yeah, it's upstate New York.
No, that's
No?
this is Northampton. There is a Northampton in Massachusetts. Northampton, Massachusetts.
Okay, I'm thinking of a different one.
But he's from England. He's from Northampton in England, which is like, I think it's like Uplands or Yorkshire or something. I don't remember exactly. I think it's like Northern England. Yeah.
Dude, the picture of him on the book jacket on the back, look at him.
Yeah.
Go back there and look at that photo right now. In the back.
I don't have it.
Yeah, no, it's on the back of the jacket in the fold.
Well, I have no.
Oh, you took it off. Okay, never mind.
I took it off.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he's got a great. He looks like a wizard, man. He's like.
Yeah, he looks like a freaking wizard magician for sure. Yeah. Are you kidding me? That photo is so intense.
Yeah. Yeah, so
epic.
Cool. He's an intense.
Oh my god, dude. He looks like
definitely...
mad knowledge.
Mad knowledge.
No, seriously. And his wife is rad too. If you look her up, she's a force in the world of comic books and beyond. Cool. Yeah, she's was one of the first feminist comic book artists in she's American. Melinda Gebbie, I think is her name, Gebbie, and she's like a pioneer in being a female artist in a male dominated world. And
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, any final thoughts on these? How was this amount? Felt good. I mean, I took it more seriously, maybe. Was a little less chaos in my life to be able to read it very fluidly. Do we want to split the next section up into 2 parts, or do we want to just chuck it out one more for Thunderman?
Do you guys want to even check in and see? Because some of them are fast reads and some of them are you want to take more time with them. So we can always just shoot for both and in a week, see if we've made it halfway or something. I don't know. How do you guys feel?
That sounds good to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll touch base with you all then on Wednesday and so we'll plan for the rest of Thunderman. And then I think we have to read the chapter beforehand, right? We
The
didn't
short one, right?
the short one, Illuminations, and then the last few. So yeah, I mean we still have a bit to go, but like two or three more sessions. So we'll keep in touch about it. I'll create a group chat right now too, or a text thread. But yeah, my final thought is Wordsley. Is it Worlsley? He's the main character.
Yeah.
I kind of think so, yeah.
Okay.
Because he's the one who keeps like coming back and seems to have more of a narrative.
Okay.
Everything's kind of like there's like a gravity around him. But I was listening to another magic podcast and I heard that last name come up. So I'm wondering if there's like a reference to like because it was like basically like he was kind of like a shunned magician or something. And he
Orloff?
had that last name. So I was wondering if like this is something like that. Because remember the other story too, where the guy's like he's dragging his like coffin of or Worsley is dragging his coffin of like comics because his girlfriend's gonna break up with him. It's either her or the comics, right?
I don't think that's Worsley. That's somebody else in that.
Well, I kind of like thought maybe that was kind of like an extension, like of like the kind of I don't know. I feel like there's something there with that. Like there's like a string, like a motif between that, and I don't know. I kind of feel like
Yeah,
I
we
don't know.
didn't
There's something
discuss
about
that
there's like an ode to like throwing out old knowledge, but it's like being forced on you by like other people to remain relevant.
But did you catch
And
that chapter? He's not actually hauling his comic books.
no, I know, but like just like
Yeah.
the concept of it because it's
Right.
like I know he's not. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
but um
That was the
just
twist
the
at the
notion
end.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
Right.
insightful.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully it gets cleared up by the end. That would be really, I mean, keep that in the back of your head, and then see where it goes from there. Because it might be like like you said, a motif of a magician that was shunned in their community or something. And like, what's the fate of this dude, It's kind of
Because it's like his knowledge was like respected by the two guys talking in the podcast. But he had been like pushed out at his time because he like disagreed with somebody like Crowley.
Hmm.
Or
Oh,
like they're
that sounds really familiar. They might have,
I mean it's
And
happened to a
this,
lot of magicians with him apparently, but some geniuses are difficult and that's part of their flair, I guess, for good or bad.
maybe we were
yeah.
talking. Like, that sounds really familiar. Anyway.
I have this really cool little book that I got at the thrift store that's on like just like Western magic. It's got like all kinds of chapters on like pretty much everything you'd want to know, but it's cool to like read the history, kind of get the lowdown on people, kind of like reading like a magic textbook tabloid where you're like, oh, here's the lowdown on what happened for like 100 years of drama.
Yeah.
It's
Totally.
good to catch up on to like know context of like where and why ideas split off. And that's kind of like interesting in the comic book world with like even how they're trying to make regulations on these comics and then it's considered like censorship, but like the guy who like you said and he's representing it in the courtroom and he's like literally on drugs babbling and saying like heinous shit. Like they didn't even like say anything when the judges got up and just like walked out. They didn't even like say anything to him and he was just like licking his lips and like sweating and just like oh man.
I liked that chapter how it kind of like you just know you kind of like can project and know what these like conservative senators are thinking without actually like explicitly saying that like just from given his perspective versus their perspective and what they're saying it's like you just know like what he's saying is what he's doing is digging himself deeper in his own grave because just by like your own experience what these conservative senators are like how they think I think just given that perspective is really good like yeah
That was a fun
Well, and
one.
he has this gravity to him that's like a tragic character flaw where he knows exactly what they're thinking and how they're feeling, and he knows that he's presenting himself bad, but like it's just making himself loop into a worse and worse state. And he just keeps getting into this like frenzy, and it's kind of like this looping pattern that you see him do where he like even, you're kind of in his head while he's in the courtroom. And so you're kind of looping through his thoughts in the courtroom, looping through his thoughts in the courtroom. So you really do feel like him for a second, like you're in his brain. And you just imagine like what that is like for the people trying to take it seriously.
Yeah, but
And
what he's
this
doing is
guy's
actually,
industry is like on the line too. Like press freedom for comics is on the line, and they put this guy on the stand. Like, like,
but
oh
what
my
he's doing is
God.
actually telling the truth and actually saying things as it is, like with nuance and like intelligence, whereas they're just like coming at it with this like intense moralizing, this just like rigid moralizing, and he's like
I'm not playing that
showing them
game.
that like,
Yeah.
but like what he's, of course he can't, he exists in a different world than they are, like and that's why it can't, there he's like digging himself in a hole,
That's
and
why you get a lawyer.
he understands their world, he understands what they're coming from, but they don't understand him, they, because they only see him
That's
as like
true.
this immoral, like, and so whatever he says will just be immoral to them, but he actually has nuance, and like he has the like more holistic, like more imaginative and intelligent, I would say, view,
True. But get
Yeah.
a lawyer. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, in a congressional deposition, that's not, you
oh, is
don't
that
really,
not how it goes?
yeah. I don't think you can have, it's not, that's
No,
because
your
you're
head's on
not
the
really,
chopping block.
because they're not gonna like, they're not convicting him of any crime.
Okay,
They're
they're
just
trying to
like,
get his perspective,
yeah,
and his perspective is just a little wacky.
yeah. And
Well, no,
apparently this
they're trying
comics
to
code,
create censorship rules about what they
yeah.
can and can't write or and say in comics, which is,
Well, I think,
infringement on press freedom. I think because I like really like graphic novels, and a lot of graphic novels are meant for adults, not for children, because they're like long, deep, intense, like gnarly stories. Like, animes, you could say, are they for kids or are they not? Like, if you watch an anime and you've seen them, you know that that's not for a kid. Like some of
it
them are, but not a
depends.
lot.
Yeah,
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 like you know what I mean. Like not
yeah,
the graphic novel kind.
yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's kind of ridiculous to like damn a whole media source based off of the fact that there's a children's section and that parents aren't regulating.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of the internet too. Like your kids are gonna find it, but you gotta like expose them to it and talk to them about it in like a proper way. Like maybe buy them their first weird comic and be like, "Yo, here we want to like page through it together and talk about it."
Yeah.
I remember like getting like Mad TV, like magazines when I was younger, and I was because I love watching Mad TV with my mom, but it was fun to like keep up on politics based off how they made fun of the world.
Yeah, grandma used to record South Park because my mom wouldn't let me watch it.
Ah,
We'd watch the VHS recordings, me and
Oh my
grandma.
God, that's
Tell your
oh,
so
mom,
cute.
watching
Secret
South
Sound.
Park.
wow. VHS South Park. Yeah.
Yeah,
Goes back that far.
yeah, right. Yeah. It's VHS.
That makes me feel old. Yeah.
Me too. Uh, yeah.
By the way, the one other thing I wanted to mention was like I thought it was cool, like this last chapter, how it really does like it's the parallels to this world are really cool, and I think that's a fun thing too, because it's like it is like this alternate world, but it is like paralleling this one, and then so like this massive comics is obviously Marvel, and American is DC, and like so I think
Oh,
so
Oh
he's kind
yeah,
of ripping on Marvel a little bit, like because Marvel has all these superheroes that are like Iron Man, who's like a weapons manufacturer and cyberneticist, and he
like
even mentions that, like,
Captain
and then
America.
Spider-Man, who's like irradiated, but he got powers,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Ant-Man
normalize.
is
yeah,
Yeah,
Ant-Man,
normalize
Ulysses,
nuclear
yeah.
destruction and normalize. And then wait, which one's the America guy? So it's not
Cap-
Captain America, but
well, Captain America is Marvel too.
Oh,
Thunderman's
Thunderman
like
is
Superman.
Superman.
Thunderman's Superman, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think King Bee is like Batman, kind of.
Oh,
Yeah, that's my understanding.
yeah. I mean, I've always been DC over Marvel, but I don't know why.
Yeah,
But maybe not with the movies. I don't really know enough.
Well, because one's like, no offense, but cheese ball and very like propaganda oriented.
Is that
And I
Marvel?
feel like, yes. And
Don't
I feel
sue
like
us
DC's
for
more
this.
gritty.
Marvel.
DC's more gritty and real and like Gotham City vibes, you
Yeah.
know? It's got like the underbelly of society, and so you do see a lot of like triumph in the face of darkness, but it's like real darkness, not like, oh, you have to save the world this one big time.
Yeah. 'Cause Gotham's already jacked up.
yeah,
It's more like true to form. So I think that you have to like graduate. You start in Marvel as a little kid because you're like, oh, shiny superheroes. Like you're saying about the little kids watching things that have superheroes in them. They're training them. They're they're like prepping them to get into DC, which is going to be more gritty and real. You
yeah.
know
And
what I
some of
mean?
the best, like Batman and I think
They're
Superman
vetting them.
stories were written by Alan Moore too. So
Really?
yeah, he's got one that's super well known called Killing Batman Killing Joke. That's like
Dude, Batman is the best. His Batman's incredible. The best. My
yeah,
favorite.
I don't even know.
yeah,
Batman's already my favorite, but like that's my favorite of my favorite.
yeah. Batman is so good, and Alan Moore brings it. Yeah. So Alan Moore did a lot for DC. He did like I think Swamp Thing, a bunch of Swamp Thing, and like a bunch of other stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Well, finish it up next time and get some overall thoughts going. So I'm gonna stop the recording.